and welcome to the Bookkeepers Podcast. I'm Zoe Whitman. I'm here with Jo Wood, and we're joined by Grace Hardy today. Hi, Grace. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
We're good. We've had a really busy, good day, good week. We've got some changes happening behind the scenes. Our Success Lounge are the first to know about it. So we're making some changes here, and then we'll be talking about it over the next couple of months. And it's feeling really good. I feel like our team is really, like, they all are working. We've got a mission. We know what we're doing. It's got, like, there's really good energy here. So yeah, feeling good.
How are you, Grace?
I am good. I had a very stressful week last week, but this week is just a lot calmer and like lots of exciting things on, which is really good.
Nice.
Well, do you want to start, Grace? Do you want to start by telling us a bit about your background and what you do?
Of course. So I started my accounting journey through an apprenticeship when I was 18, straight after sixth form. I was there for 3 years, completed my AAT level 3 and 4, then decided to leave and set up my own practice called Hardy Accounting, which I've pretty much grown just using social media. And then off the back of that, I've been able to launch more fun and creative things that I enjoy doing, like my podcast.
Wow, you are a powerhouse. And the fact that you started your business like straight off the bat after finishing your apprenticeship, obviously you was working in a practice while you was doing your apprenticeship, so you got that skill set. But where do you think your like tenacity and confidence to go out on your own at such a young age, where's that come from?
I think actually since I got my first job when I was 16, I used to be very shy as a teenager, like very introverted, loads of anxiety about absolutely everything. But when I got my first job and learned how to ask people that I didn't know questions and things like that, my confidence just started to grow. And for me personally, when I was in my corporate job, I could see how you could so easily blink and 50 years would go by and you'd still be in that same job. And for me personally, that terrified me. I always want to do something to help someone and make meaningful change. And I thought, I can't do that within this corporate role. I need to go out by myself, and that's how I can make actual change.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And like, even just to have that insight and view of your purpose and building a vision around, I definitely did not have that in my 20s. I was just like, I want to work. I know I can work. I will make money. That would be great. But to be able to take that step back and say, well, actually, what's next from here? How did you feel starting a practice? I don't want to make this about age because that's not fair. But in a lot of people in our community will join bookkeeping, for example, and becoming a practice owner at a point in their life where something has changed for them, like lifestyle has changed, or, you know, they will have different drivers to become self-employed. And usually there's a turning point, and then they find us, and then we support them through that sort of transition and that journey. And it's often about confidence building. It sounds to me like you built that confidence foundation already, and you were then able to go and do what you wanted and what you'd chosen to do. But how did you find it sort of entering the world of business? Because I guess you weren't surrounding yourself by people who were all on the same page, the same wavelength as you, same age, same level of experience and knowledge. Have you found it to be a challenge being sort of accepted as a business owner?
At the beginning, it was really difficult. All my friends went to university anyway, so I didn't really understand the world of apprenticeships or working a 9 to 5. And then when I made the leap to be a business owner, they were like, okay, this is even weirder, like, what are you doing? And so obviously I found the Six Figure Bookkeeper on Facebook when I was trying to decide whether I wanted to go traveling to take a break or whether to start my own business. And then I saw that community of bookkeepers and accountants as something like really amazing. Like, you can just scroll on that Facebook page and learn so much and take so much value away from it at surface level. And so I actually decided to go to Accountex North last September to sort of suss out what it was all about and see how like friendly people were and if it was like an environment and community I wanted to be a part of. So I went, loved it, came back, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And so in the very early stages of my business, I really struggled with loneliness. No one else was doing what I was doing. I really struggled to find people my own age that were running businesses, not necessarily in accounting, but in anything. And so through social media, that is where I've been able to make relationships online and then obviously see them in person with other business owners my age, but also other business owners in accounting and bookkeeping.
And that takes us to when we first met. We met on International Women's Day, 8th of March this year, 2024. I was invited to a lunch, and so were you. And you were invited to lunch because you have, in such a small space of time, built up a brand and built up that visibility, so much so that when we saw each other, I was like starstruck that I was seeing you, because I was following you on TikTok, and you were like, oh my God, I want to be a bookkeeper. And we were both trying to out fangirl each other because I'd been watching you grow on TikTok, and I'm like, wow, this is so impressive what you are doing. And, you know, we would love to dive into how you're using TikTok and all social media platforms as a platform to get yourself so visible and so well known. You know, I've been in this industry like 25 years, and then like to be invited to this lunch, I was like so honored. And you're there in like when you're like your early stages of business, and you've done that so super quickly. And then it's really, really impressive, really impressive. So it's everybody wants to know, like, how do you get started? What does it do for you? And I know you've been really honest about documenting the ups and downs while you've been doing this TikTok and social media journey. You have not, it's not been this picture perfect, everything's going well. There has been ups and downs. So I'd love to talk about that. But the first thing I'm going to say about TikTok, because I have this conversation all the time with my friends. I'm a woman of a certain age, and people say to me, well, is it on TikTok? Oh, I'm not looking at that. I'm not looking at that. But I want to explain to people that TikTok is so different from other social media platforms, because it's not a social media platform. It's an entertainment platform. So you get to pick your algorithm by things that interest you, which is very different to Facebook and Instagram, because that's built up, and LinkedIn, around connections, who you know. So the people in what you see in your feed is from your connections and what they're creating. But TikTok's very different. It's about, so when you download the app, your first job is to get really good at looking at something. And if you don't like it, get rid of it quick. Because if you watch things for too long, TikTok thinks, oh, you like it. So at the first little bit, you're going to have a whole random, but it's trying to figure out what you like, what you dislike. It also, when you start sharing videos with your friends inside TikTok, it figures out who your friends are. So you're going to like some of what they're seeing on their algorithms. And we crack up, me and my best friend, because we realize we have the same kind of feed. Or if something weird comes up on my feed, I'm like, what have you been watching? Because I've seen this weird thing, and I bet it's your fault. That kind of thing. It's very, very different. Now, that's an older person explaining it. Grace, have I understood what TikTok's about?
That was literally the most brilliant explanation I've ever heard. It's so correct. It's basically like an echo chamber of like your thoughts, feelings, hobbies, and interests.
Wow. So why did you decide that was the place for you to start like documenting your journey to becoming a business owner?
I think for me personally, with TikTok, it just gets sent out to loads of people. Whereas with Instagram, it really just gets sent out to your followers and maybe a couple of non-followers. Whereas with TikTok, you have a lot more space and chance of going viral and hitting more people. So for me, I was like, well, I'm a nobody with 0 followers and I want to be somebody. So how do I get there? And TikTok is a really good way of doing that. You can do things like put your Instagram in your bio. So if someone likes you on TikTok, they can then go on Instagram and follow you as well. So I just remember going to Account X and I was like, okay, my first TikTok is going to be come with me to Account X North. And I just did a little slideshow of everything that I did that day. And I remember I was sitting on the sofa with my cousin and I was really scared to post it. And she was like, come on, Grace, just like, come on, hurry up, do it. And I posted it. And then we were sitting in bed watching a movie and I was like, oh my God, it's got 1,000 views. Like the first one, I was like, that's so many people. I could not wrap my head around it. And then it got to 2,000 views and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so if I was to post that on Instagram with 0 followers, it'd probably be 1 like, which is like myself on another account. Whereas with TikTok, it can just be sent out to so many different people.
That's really interesting to know. And I remember we've spoken before about using, I guess they were photos. It was a photo slideshow, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that everyone thinks I've got to be a video creator, and it doesn't have to be that. Like that's primarily why it is there, but other things can do well as well. So that's really interesting. And I think people are just interested generally in your life. Can I ask you something though? Before you said, I'm a nobody and I want to be a somebody, and you realize, and this is like a moment that lots of bookkeepers take a while to get to. So you knew this right at the beginning, that you needed to be visible. People needed to know you existed if you were going to find the clients. How did you feel about, like, how did you know that? I don't know if that sounds like a daft question. How did you know you needed to be a somebody? And how did it feel? Obviously, you said on sofa, you were like, oh God, I don't know. But what kind of talk to yourself did you have to be able to start using TikTok as part of a routine, I suppose?
I think, especially like the social media era that I've like grown up in, everyone seems to have a personal brand and they're able to generate revenue from that personal brand. So everyone buys into who they are and their trust and their credibility. And then lots of like influencers and social media people are able to start a clothing brand or, I don't know, a productivity planner off the back of that because people trust what they say. So I was like, if I want to get clients for accounting, people need to trust who I am. And I found that very scary at first, mainly because I was like, oh my God, I'm a young female in finance. No one is going to take me seriously whatsoever. They're going to look at my face and go, she won't have any experience. And so TikTok was a platform for me to be able to show my credibility, my experience and my qualifications so that people could start to trust me as a person. But it was really, really scary starting. I sat with my cousin. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is so scary. I've never really been a very fun, front-facing person. So that's why we decided on starting with slideshows. I didn't need to show up doing like talking head videos, which is where you sit to the camera and you chat straight away. It was just about easing myself into it and what I felt was comfortable.
That is, so what I'm hearing there is your youth and the fact that you're, you know, a couple of decades younger has served you in a way, because what you see in your everyday world, you've learned about personal brands like straight away. Whereas what we sometimes have the conversation, people are like, it feels really like egotistical, and it feels like there's all these barriers and things because we didn't grow up with that. You know, I barely had a mobile phone at your age. We were still mostly doing like texting all out our letters and everything like that, like punching in the buttons 3 times to get to the T, that kind of thing. You know, so it's a different era, and so we've had to learn this. And actually, you straight out the bat, you're like, well, that's obvious. I have to do that. And what an amazing like starting point. Sorry, Zoe.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, is it obvious to like, how do you see, as someone, as Joe's going to keep saying, who's a few decades younger than us, how do you really feel like, honestly, when you think about personal brand? Because I'm like, is Grace starting a clothing line? Like, when can I get Grace's planner now? But how do you honestly see personal brand? Because I think there's something that is being missed. Like, we spend a lot of time saying it's not just about your business brand. It's not about a logo. No one really cares. The best thing you can do is put your face out there and start talking about stuff you are interested in, that you're passionate about, and then people will learn you're a bookkeeper and they'll connect with you. I think it's that simple. But I feel like sometimes I'm talking to a brick wall. So sorry, community, because we it's just a journey, right? It's like we're at this stage where this has shifted, but clearly if you are a few decades younger, it's naturally expected that everyone who you're going to buy from has a personal brand. So how are you seeing it? Like, what are we missing?
I think, and loads of people will say this, is that people buy from emotions. And so people have to be emotionally connected to you to be able to trust you and like buy something. And especially nowadays, there's so much overconsumption. There are so many accountancy and bookkeeping practices that you need to make yourself stand out. And how do you do that? That's by having a personality. And so for me, if you look at my profile pictures, none of them are my company logo. Even on my company page, the profile picture is my face with the company like color in the background. And so for me, it's really important that people like know what your values are, what you stand for, your personality, because we always say when we're onboarding new clients, when we have that discovery call, that call is for the client to get to know you and see if they like you, but also for you to see if you like them. You don't want to start onboarding clients that you don't click with, because they'll become a pain in the arse down the line, and no one wants that. And so I know when that client comes on a discovery call, if they've come through TikTok or Instagram, they know my personality and they think they're going to gel well with that. That's why they booked a call. So in that call, it's really important for me to see if I gel with them as well.
So after that first post and you got it out there and you had some traction, now that doesn't happen for everybody, of course. You obviously, you hit a nerve that day, the algorithm was on your side, and you got some good reach, and that obviously spurred you on to do some more. What does your as TikTok is part of your marketing plan and strategy, what would you say is like a good amount of content to put out there? What are your kind of different types of pillars? If someone was looking at starting, is it something, on TikTok, is it daily, or can it be a bit more ad hoc? What's your advice around that?
So I would always say start with your client avatar if you haven't built one already. So start with that, and then it's looking at their pain points. So I have content pillars, mostly of client pain points, tax, just because that always does well for me, and then behind the scenes of being a business owner. And those are things that I will always post on consistently. And with TikTok, it is one of those platforms where you do have to be a bit more consistent. For example, on Instagram, on my business page, I only post 3 times a week now. But on TikTok, it's really important to show up as consistently as you can. There are some people that say if you want really fast growth, then post 3 times a day, just because the likelihood of one of those videos doing really well is obviously much higher because you're posting more. But it's really important to post it in the schedule that suits you. When I started my business, I was very stressed out about posting. I would sit at like 9 p.m. going, oh my goodness, I haven't posted on TikTok. My life is going to crumble. And obviously it didn't. So I now bulk create. And then I also go, okay, well, if today I don't have a post, it's not the end of the world. Tomorrow is a new day. I've also done XYZ today. So the TikTok is the last thing I need to think of. So it's about being kind to yourself, but also finding something where you can show up as consistently as possible.
Do you think that you need to be clever at thinking about planning video? Like I watch YouTube, a lot of YouTube with kids, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could think about a storyline in that way. And obviously short form video is different, but still needs to have something about it to make you want to watch it. Have you, like, how did you learn? How did you learn what to put out on TikTok?
It's very much trial and error on TikTok. So it's posting something with a hook and seeing if it works or it doesn't work, and just keep throwing stuff in the wall and seeing what sticks. Like, there's no magic formula to it. It's also looking at what other creators in your niche are posting. But some things will do well for me and do terribly for someone else. And other things will do really well for someone and then do terribly for me. So it's finding what your algorithm likes. Like, for example, if I post a tax video, that will always do well. That will always get views for me. And so I know to sort of go into that, but it doesn't need to be anything creative or magical. My most viral videos are all slideshows of just factual information, being like, here's 3 ways to pay less tax. And it's always stuff like ISAs, pension contributions, and paying yourself in the most effective way possible. It's nothing revolutionary. But we do have to remember that as bookkeepers and accountants, we have knowledge that the average person doesn't necessarily have. And so to that average person, it is revolutionary. They probably haven't heard it before. And so it's really stripping it back and go, how can I help the average person with the information that I have?
So how long have you been running your practice for, and what does your practice look like with regards to numbers and the services you're offering?
So my practice is nearly 1 year old. So it'll be one in November, which is so cute. I literally texted my cousin, I'm meant to be going up to Manchester, and I said, we're going to get cupcakes, and I'm just going to put a little candle in each of them, which will be very sweet. But my practice, we tailor to young business owners, mainly in the creative sector, and we offer pretty much all the services that a normal accountancy practice would have, like annual accounts, corporation tax, VAT, payroll, bookkeeping, self-assessments, all that good stuff. And for me, my clients are really happy with that. We take a very colloquial approach, just because they are young business owners. So we commute over WhatsApp because they don't want to communicate over email because they don't check their emails. So it's making sure that you're tailoring your communication and things like that to your client and what they want.
And do you have any support in your team? And how many clients are you like currently looking after?
So I think we look after about 40 clients. I have someone that runs payroll. I have someone that helps out with bookkeeping. I also have an admin assistant, and we're going to hopefully hire for a social media assistant as well to help with like scheduling posts and bits and bobs because it's getting a bit crazy.
That sounds amazing. And have all of your clients come through TikTok?
I would say 90% of them have come through TikTok, yes.
And then I guess you're getting referrals as well off the back of that. As like, I just imagine there's this massive opportunity because there'll be people who are seeing your videos who don't need you, but then they're probably thinking, oh, I saw this girl on TikTok, because I remember Joe saying you found your mortgage advisor on TikTok. Like it just is like the new way, right, of searching and finding resources and finding the people.
Yeah, 100%. And my clients are lovely. And so when you do a good service, they'll be like, oh, my friend who also has this profession is looking for some help. Do you mind if I give them your number? And I'm like, no, of course not. Like, go crazy.
I absolutely love this. And so the thing is, what you are applying to TikTok, the consistent action, the like bulk creation, how you're interacting, is because your audience are sitting at the other side of their phone looking at TikTok. And anyone can have the same thing with an audience that's on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. It's like, what do you think is the most important thing? Is it the post itself? Is it the fact that you're dealing with pain points? Or is it like the fact that you're consistently trying and seeing if it sticks?
I think it's a number of things. I think the two main things is pain points. People aren't going to read something if they don't think it applies to them, but also being consistent. Because if I put out one post, not everyone is going to see it. So it's important to show up consistently. You can't do one post a week and think, yeah, everyone is going to see this, because they're not.
You've definitely got me thinking about how even we use social media in our business, and like what it's something that's changing all the time. And I think that's actually one of the things that's the hardest as a business owner, because you have to be adapting all the time. And you've just said you're maybe getting a social media assistant in. And I think that if you see that, like Grace has just explained, that 90% of her 40 clients potentially have come from TikTok. So you investing in support to be on social media, which for a lot of people will be an afterthought, or like you said, the thing that you do at 9 o'clock at night, actually there's a direct return on that. And if you can measure it, if you decide that that's one of the numbers in your business that you need to have and measure as a KPI, you can understand why it makes sense to invest in that part of your area. I think a lot of people haven't got time for social media, but again, it's directly linked to the revenue, like the growth goals that you're working towards are directly linked to how visible you are. And I think you've got really great stats that a lot of people haven't got. And I think just thinking about what is the KPI here, because it's not all about what does your P&L say, it's about which numbers are important to you. What's your target? Like what do you, I guess, are you posting 3 times a day at the moment?
On TikTok, no. I don't have time for that.
No,
right.
okay.
Which is all right. But so I do different platforms differently. And I think at the end of the day, when you post and you're building a personal brand, it's not necessarily just about clients. It's also the opportunity that comes with. So it might be that someone sees you and they ask you to speak at some event or go on a podcast like this, for example. All of that is elevating your personal brand. And that's also really important because that puts you in front of more people. So when someone comes on my podcast, for example, that's value add for them. They're not being paid to come on my podcast, but their story and what they do can go out to hundreds of people, and that's value add for them. So it's not necessarily just about the clients, it's about all the other things that it brings with it. So on LinkedIn, for example, I post 5 times a week. And I think LinkedIn is always a good platform to start on because it really doesn't take a lot of time. You can write 5 LinkedIn posts within an hour easily. And so it's always a good place to start because it's very like low ag, low maintenance. And then Instagram, again, is 5 posts on my personal brand page, 3 posts on my business. And then TikTok is once a day, maybe twice a day if I can hack it, just on 1 page.
And do you then measure that? Like, do you measure internally? Do you like, how do you make sure that you do the work? Like, because it's easy to say, and I think like it's really easy to say, this is my routine and this is what I'm going to do. But then when life happens, we let it slip. So how do you keep yourself accountable to doing that?
So for me, I block out 3 hours on a Sunday to set and schedule and write my LinkedIn posts. That's just something that works for me. Obviously, if you have kids and you're running around, then that's not going to work. It might be that you choose a Wednesday morning or whatever suits you. Just a Sunday suits me. That's always my reset day at home. It's when I do my washing, I change my bed, all that sort of stuff. So it makes sense for me to do it on that day. But also it's about being kind to yourself. So I've gone through grief, breakups, running a business, and there's times where I don't want to post because I'm bawling my eyes out. And it's being okay with that. When I was away on holiday, for example, I didn't post for 2 weeks. And that's completely fine because you can't put so much pressure on yourself because sometimes it will be your last straw. So it's just being kind to yourself, but making a schedule that suits you.
And this has impacted, like, your personal brand has spread so much further than social media. And, you know, you've got your own podcast and you're a guest on other people's podcasts. But you have become like an ambassador for apprentices as well. Like you are inspiring this next generation of not just future clients for you, but people that want to follow in your footsteps. Like that is like just so heartwarming and lovely. And was that something that you intended on doing, or has it just happened because you've become so visible?
There was intentionality behind it. So when I was trying to find my apprenticeship, my mum actually introduced me to apprenticeships because she was a training provider for one. And so she helped me. I remember going to my school going, hey, I really want to do an apprenticeship. What level should I be doing? And the careers advisor turned around and said, there are levels. And then at that point, I knew that my school didn't have any resources to help me find an apprenticeship. So it was me and my mum against the apprenticeship world. And so for me, I've always wanted to be that person that I didn't have when I was trying to navigate the world of apprenticeship. So that's why I talk about it on my LinkedIn and my Instagram, so that people are aware that they can come ask me questions and you don't have to know anything, but do go and find someone that does.
I love this. And actually, you know, from what we do for a living as a finance person, there'll be a time where you didn't know something and you're probably trying to plug the gap for the clients who come to you. We're doing some work with Float recently, and you know, I know that Colin was saying he just didn't have that insight into the sort of cash flow, and so Float was born. And I think like understanding why you do what you do, why it matters, is really important. Like it will just help you connect with people so much better. I'd love to know a bit more about your podcast, Grace. Tell us about that.
So I run the Unconventional podcast, which is basically a place where I speak to people that have taken unconventional routes in life, basically to show other people that you don't have to stick to the norm to be successful, and you should always step out of your comfort zone.
I have been a guest on Grace's podcast. She's recently just sent me some of the promotional material, and I can tell it was so lovely. It felt like a therapy session. I honestly just, it was just such a lovely experience to be a guest on a podcast and just talk. And there was about your sound setup. I had these headphones on. I couldn't hear anything other than your voice. And it was just such a lovely experience. So, yeah, how do you get your guests? How are you like looking for them? And what is it, what your audience are asking for? Or is it just people that you come across?
It started off actually at the beginning, my friends that I found that were running businesses, because again, when I started filming it back in February 2024, when my platform wasn't as big, so I didn't really have the balls to ask big people like you to come on my little podcast. So I started off just like chit-chatting to my friends, and then again it just became a bit bigger, and I got to like interview MPs, for example, about apprenticeships, which was really cool. And then it's just grown and grown and grown. But so far, it's all been people that I've known, and now people reach out asking to be on the podcast, some really interesting and big people. And I was like, oh my God, this is such a cool email. But mostly I just come across people online, and I think that they have a really interesting story to tell, or really interesting things that should be shared to my audience. So for example, I shot an episode yesterday with a wonderful girl called Ellie, who has been running her business for 5 years now. And we had really interesting conversations about dating as a business owner, which is a struggle in your 20s, how to manage life and running a business, which is all stuff that not everyone speaks very widely about, but it's something that I definitely talk about online, because it's important to show that not everything is positive 100% of the time, and that as a 20-year-old running a business, you go through life and then you have to run a business on top of it.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to go and have a listen. Grace, it's been really lovely to speak to you today. Thank you so much for talking to us. I've learned loads. I'm going to go and be on TikTok for the rest of the day. Grace, how can people connect with you and find out more about what you do?
So I'm on Instagram under Hardy Accounting and Grace_Hardy_, and that is the same on TikTok as well. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn under Grace Hardy, MAAT. And then also the Unconventional podcast is on YouTube and Spotify.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone who's tuned in today. And we'll see you next time for another episode of the Bookkeepers Podcast. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.